How's it going, everyone? Miguel Quiles here, and I'm here at Sony Condo 2018, and there's all these like amazing photographers walking around, and I happen to have one here with me. Greg Watermann is, actually I'm going to let you describe who you are and what you do, because I'm sure it's going to be way more grandiose. I would say he's a Zeiss ambassador. He is a very, very experienced photographer, but you do some really cool stuff. So let everyone know a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Hi, Greg Watermann. I specialize in music. Most specifically for the last 8 years, I've been Pitbull's personal photographer.
Pitbull.
Around
Mr. Worldwide.
And he is.
So you're technically Mr. Worldwide as well.
I'm Mr. Worldwide's photographer. And he is Mr. Worldwide.
That is awesome. Yeah. That is really awesome. And so I'm sure there's a lot of stories that that you know we'll be able to kind of like talk about in your experience of you know traveling and working with Pitbull.
Some stories. My best ones, though, I can't tell you.
It's totally understandable. But you know, so tell me a little bit about like the type of work. So obviously you travel with him, but has that always been kind of your thing? Is like not really music photography, but you know, traveling with musical acts, has that been your thing from day one, or did you do something else and transition into that?
It was sort of my thing in the very beginning, because the first thing that I ever really did as a project, as a photographer, was I was the high school yearbook photographer.
Nice.
So I was the guy always walking around with a camera. This was back when everybody didn't have one.
Right.
Documenting everything at school, as boring as that was, but it was still fun and exciting. So that's how I started. Then I was in New York City in the 80s shooting fashion, but then started doing portraits as well. 20 years ago, I moved to Los Angeles just to focus on music, and really wound up indirectly doing the same thing that I used to do for my high school yearbook, because now I don't really do a lot of shoots where we're setting things up with lights and props and models and locations. Now my clients hire me to just follow them around the world and document their lives.
Right.
Which with my clients especially is much more interesting than lining people up in expensive clothes against a rented backdrop.
It's more real.
Yes, yeah, and it's around the world. It's a 24-hour-a-day job. Usually the only sleep I get is if we're on a plane flying someplace.
Right.
That's downtime. But otherwise there's a camera in my hand and I'm making images.
That's so wild. So speaking of camera in your hand, what do you use? What do you shoot with? What's your like your go-to setup for what you do?
Well, I've been using the Sony mirrorless stuff since that came out. I've just been a huge fan of it because I also shoot so much video and photos, and the quality and the features and all of that works really, really well. The go-to setup for me right now is a Sony A9 and a Zeiss Loxia 35 f2, which is a manual focus, manual diaphragm lens. That's my favorite focal length, 35 millimeter. Even if I happen to use a zoom lens for an entire day for a project, then at the end of the day when I'm going through and looking at my metadata, most of the ones that I kept are between 30 to 45 millimeters, even randomly wherever I'm just setting my zoom lens. So for some reason I see things properly, to me anyway, at a 35 millimeter focal length. So that's the lens that, if I had to pick just one lens, that would be the one.
Yeah, it was interesting yesterday when we were kind of talking about photography, and you were talking about how you see, and talking about how people usually say that 50 millimeter is kind of like what your eye sees, but you kind of had a different spin on that with talking about the 35.
Right. That's the thing people say the most about my pictures, is that when they're looking at what I shoot, they feel like they were standing there. And I think the 35 millimeter focal length has something to do with that. Yeah, our eyes are supposedly 50 millimeters, but we have two eyes, so that means you've got a wider view than just what a 50 millimeter lens sees.
Right.
But once you go wider than 35, even at 28, and then for sure at 24, you're starting to visually see, I don't want to call it distortion because the lens companies will get upset about that, but it's a distorted image optically from what your eye sees.
Right.
Lines are no longer parallel. Things that get out to the edge are stretched. And if you get too close to something, it becomes different. 24 millimeters is not a good lens for doing portraits, because you're going to be exaggerating facial features. If that's what you're looking for, okay, great, but most people don't want their facial features exaggerated. But a 35 millimeter lens gives you that wider view than a 50 does without starting to give that wide angle look to an image.
Right. So talk to me a little bit about, and to the people watching this, how you approach, because when you're shooting some of these concerts, they spend a lot of money on lighting these stages. They spend a lot of money on, and thought goes into lighting these different things. But they're not doing it for you as the photographer, right?
Right.
The lighting is there for the audience, for them to enjoy it, but it's not always the most ideal lighting for maybe a newer photographer. So how do you approach dialing in settings for shooting music, for shooting concerts, for shooting events like this? Because I think a lot of people kind of struggle with figuring out, they go into a scenario and they're like, I have no idea what settings I should dial in.
Right, and that can become very intimidating. The thing that, the dirty little secret about music photography really live is, in actuality, there's generally somewhat of a key light on the singer specifically.
Always, yeah.
And that exposure, even though it seems like every 10 times a second it's a different color and it's a different amount, it's a different level, it's actually not. And that's that exposure itself. Once you figure out what that is, if you just set your camera at that and shoot the whole show at that exposure setting, you'd be surprised how many pictures would come out at or near perfect. Yeah, and that's not just a big show that's on television with, in a stadium, or even in the tiniest little club with just 3 lights, flashing and changing around, the exposure itself stays in a proper area. So the key really to shooting live music, and I know this is tough for people, but you have to understand what all those settings on your camera mean, and you have to get away from the A. Anything that's A, automatic, average, or anything else, you cannot use those settings. You cannot use auto exposure. You cannot use auto white balance, because that doesn't work. What happens to your camera if you have it set on auto white balance and the entire scene goes red? Your camera doesn't know that it's pointed at a red scene lit with red light. It thinks you're outside and something strange happened. It's going to start making corrections that are not going to help you in your final image in post-processing. So being in a manual situation, figuring out that, okay, the base exposure here is a 1/25 at 2.8, so I need to stay around that and I'll be close. Figure out what your proper color balance is. Is it 3200? Dial that in. A lot of places now, especially that use LED lights, sometimes they're at 55, 6500 is your correct Kelvin temperature. But if you set that at auto white balance and you think it's going to work out for you,
it's probably
not.
Not.
Sometimes, just like your phone will give you a great picture, but if you're getting hired and it's demanded upon you to get the entire show, every single song, we want this scenario, this scenario, this scenario, you can't come back and say, sorry, my camera didn't read it properly.
Yeah, that's not an option.
You have to be on point. You just do.
So it's kind of interesting. I'm always curious to see who inspires, who has inspired you? Who has inspired your process? Have you found inspiration in other people's work that you've applied to your photography and kind of blended into your style?
Absolutely, and I go for inspiration, I go as far back as I can, and I go all the way back to my main source would be Jim Marshall, who literally started. He's the grandfather of rock and roll photography. He was shooting rock and roll photography before there was rock and roll.
Oh my gosh.
If you go back and research his images, in the 50s, in the Lower East Side of Manhattan, in those jazz clubs, just these smoky, druggy, beautiful scenes of amazing. And this was before the Doors, this was before the Who, this was before the Stones, this was before any of those other bands that he started rolling with once they became something in the 60s and then into the 70s. But his work, his gritty, visceral, I was right there capturing that. He was not using a flash, which I never use. Everything is available light. And this was all on film when, the last ISO you could use was 4/800. You weren't shooting necessarily with the fastest possible lenses and none of the technology that we had. So when you go back and look at his pictures and you know that those were shot on a camera where every 36 pictures you had to stop and put another roll of film in. I know I'm sounding very 20th century here, but if you go back and look at the way people shot back then and think about what they didn't have versus what you have now, that's where you're going to get your most inspiration, because it's too easy to take a picture now. Anybody can take a picture of anything and have it be incredible without even trying. There's no excuse for a photograph not to be perfect anymore.
No, I agree.
Go back to the classics for your inspiration. Don't look at people that shot something last week and try to figure out how they did that. That's just a filter pack that they bought somewhere.
Right. More than likely, it probably is.
Yeah.
You know, when it comes to kind of like your process today, you know, I'm sure it's changed quite a bit from, you know, the days of shooting film. What does your process look like today when it comes to, you know, obviously you're traveling quite a bit with Pitbull. What is your process for creating these images? Do you edit these images on your own? When do you get a chance to, like, when do you get a chance to do all of that? How do you do that? All of that. Like, what's your process? Take me through a day in the life.
Okay, day in the life. I will wake up not to an alarm clock, maybe noon or 1 or 2 in the afternoon at the latest.
Man, that must be nice.
Yeah, well,
Jeez.
I mean, it is and it isn't, but I work till 5 in the morning.
Oh,
and
geez.
most people are like,
brutal.
no, I couldn't possibly do that, forget it. No, it's really, I spend the same amount of time doing things, I just do it on a different clock than everybody else, and that's just because of
the nature of the beast.
Yeah, my day really starts when the show starts.
Right.
Okay, let's start there. At 8 p.m., I get to his hotel room. I knock on the door, the secret little code, and I'll wait outside until he's ready. And then we walk to the venue, and I'm filming all of that because you never know. 9 times out of 10 you get nothing, but you never know when there's going to be some quick little moment where a fan just pops up out of nowhere.
Right.
Kiss on the cheek, the selfie, sign something, whatever. Those are cute little things that even in separately are interesting, but I put them all together in content, and then that gets more interesting too.
Right.
Then we get to the venue. Sometimes there's sound check, sometimes there isn't. If I have to shoot that, I will. Then there's a meet and greet. Then we shoot the show. The show is a very involved thing, and I'm running around constantly. Sometimes I have more than one camera running at once. I'll have one on stick somewhere shooting video, and then I'm shooting pictures. Then as soon as the show's over, I sit down and I scroll through however many pictures I've done. I'll average, in a 90-minute show, I probably shoot 1,500 frames.
Okay.
I will go through those 1,500 frames on the back of the camera, rifling through my cards. The ones that just immediately jump out at me, I will send Wi-Fi from the camera directly to my phone. I'll save those, usually about 20 pictures, so those are my 20 favorites. Then when I'm done, I'll go through those, crop them the way I want, make them look all nice, whatever, and send them directly from my phone to management. And they'll start tweeting them, posting them on social media, getting them out as quickly as possible.
So you're actually editing these on your phone?
Oh yeah, there's no time to do it otherwise.
Interesting.
Yeah, and Photoshop is free on the phone. The quality is amazing, and the JPEGs that the Sony cameras anyway send to my phone are incredible quality.
Right.
And sometimes I use them as final output if I don't have a choice.
Wow.
But I'm still capturing raw files too. Those are all on the card, and then that's my next process. So now it's 2 in the morning. I've delivered my job to my clients.
Right.
My batteries are all plugged in. I've cleaned my cameras and everything, but now I have to download my cards.
Right.
Everything gets downloaded onto 2 separate hard drives, backed up, maintained, everything is verified, and da-da-da-da. If there were any drops that I said, hey, this is Pitbull for MTV, you know, Europe, coming at you, da-da-da, those have to be trimmed, and I make sure that those are right. If he had to do more than one, which is hardly ever. Usually, that guy hits things on the first take like you would not believe, which makes my job easier, but more pressure. Because you can't be like, could you do that again, please? Not
you kind of messed up a little bit.
No, that's not part of my vocabulary. When he goes, okay, you ready for me? And he starts talking as I'm hitting the button.
Right.
So we put that all together, so those drops need to be emailed. So now it's 3, 4, maybe 5 o'clock in the morning, and my day is over. So then I go to sleep, and then, like I said, I wake up at 2 in the afternoon, we're in another city, and you repeat the whole process.
So there was a couple of things that I thought were...
Oh wait, then there's one other thing.
Oh, there's more?
There's one other process that I left out.
Uh-huh.
I come back from the tour then, and I now have thousands of raw files sitting on a hard drive.
Right.
And I go through all of those, matching them, of course, against the JPEGs that I already delivered to management, because I have to save those for sure.
Right.
I find all the other ones that I need, and then I go through the same process that everybody else goes through. You pick your favorites, you make them perfect, you get rid of that one stray hair that's blowing across a dancer's face, or the bead of sweat that he doesn't want, or anything else that needs some minor corrections. You get everything adjusted, then those are all put in a file for later that I present to him for approval.
So that's a lot.
It is a lot.
That's a lot.
And I do 100% of it myself.
What about the person that says, holy cow, that sounds like the life I want to live. I want to be, they want to be you. They want to be, maybe not for Pitbull, but maybe for some other, artist. because obviously getting started and having this experience that you had years ago with equipment that was far more challenging than what we have today, one would imagine that it's actually easier based on the fact that we have such sophisticated equipment and we could take great images with really not a lot of work compared
or knowledge
compared to 20, 30 years ago. So obviously it's not an equipment issue that would keep somebody from being able to try to get into the field that you're into.
Right.
What advice would you have for the photographer that's out there that says, I want to travel with, I don't know, with Justin Bieber or whoever, Kanye West, like they want to be you to these other people? How do they get into that if they were doing it today? And do you feel like you would have an easier time getting to the position that you're at based on the technology that's available today?
I have to do it now. Oh my gosh, it's so much harder now than I'm not going to say it was so hard for me back in the day. Please,
you had to trudge through the snow.
No, I did trudge through the snow, but it was so much easier. It was so much easier. It was easier then to stand out because there weren't as many people.
Right.
It's easier to do it now, which makes it harder to be noticed.
Right.
I mean, I have an advantage now that I've already been shooting professionally for 30 years. So I bring things to the table that somebody new, regardless of how good they are. Even if they're a better photographer than I am,
right.
You can't bring 30 years to the table also. So that's one thing that I'm being hired for. So that's what my clients want. When they bring me in, it's because they want a level that you can't get from somebody who's been shooting since 2000 whatever. Okay, so that's a different thing. So yeah, I would honestly hate to have to start now from scratch and like, how am I going to get myself to be noticed and stand out? That being said, if you wanted to do that now though, your photography needs to be exceptional without a doubt. There can be no reservations. There can't be anything. That's fine. But that's easy to do. And it does not cost a lot of money. That's the other easy part about it. You really only need a camera and one lens that you love, and that's all that you need. I could go around the world with a single body and a 35mm prime, and no one would know or care or say anything. You know, it's like the only reason I have other lenses is because I get bored just shooting with one focal length. Oh, let's try things long for a while. So yeah, you don't fool yourself into thinking that you don't need anything to do it. You could do it with your phone. I've done it with my phone. If I had to do it with my phone, I could do it with my phone. What you need besides exceptional imagery is a level of passion that 99% of the people in the world don't even have.
Right.
I mean, because you're talking about something that most people don't even view as a job. I mean, traveling around the world with rock stars and being on stage every night in front of 20,000 people and then the after party.
Sounds like a job to me.
No, I mean, what I just described, all the things that I do, yes, that's work. And it will kick your, to the curb. But at the same time, it's still fun, and I'm having fun the whole time. So obviously, that's a very competitive aspect. Everybody wants. I could sell my job on eBay if I wanted to. And
it would probably sell for a lot.
It would, because plenty of people would want to do that. Even if you're not a fan, like you said, even if you're not a fan of the people that I specifically work with, just doing it. Like, I would love to be the White House photographer, even if I disagreed politically with the president.
Absolutely. Imagine
maybe
the stories.
Not this one, but any other one, it would be fine.
That's kind of a dangerous job.
Yeah, but yeah, it's a level of passion and a level of I want this more than anything else, no matter what kind of thing, and not being to the point of being annoying to someone, like constantly bugging them until they finally give you a job. Probably something that I should say, because people always give me advice how to even get started as a music photographer. Like that. There's two different ways to do it. There's the way that everybody else does it, and then there's the way that I did it. And I'm not a hater. I shouldn't touch that. I'll say that again. There's two ways to do it. There's the way that everybody else does it, and then there's the way that I did it. Not me exclusively, but the way that I did it is not as common. And I'm not saying that it's the best way and the other way is not, but I think the way that I started was I found a band that I really, really liked, completely unsigned. You've never heard of them, and you won't, and they still owe me money. But I really liked their music, and I liked hanging out with them, and they liked having me around. And so I just started rolling with them. And I mean, and this is a band that's unsigned. This plays in little clubs to 30 people. But anyway, I started rolling with them and I documented everything. Recording, performing, rehearsing, hanging out, doing nothing, asleep, whatever. And I generated this body of work that was very interesting, very visceral, and very intimate. Okay, obviously meant nothing to anybody except that band, their 30 fans, and their parents. Okay, but the pictures were cool, and it was more than just a tight shot of the singer screaming into the microphone and that great shot of the drummer about to, you know, it was more than that. It was the other thing. So I showed that body of work to a bigger band, literally, and so on and so on and so on. Each time, either impressing the singer or the publicist or the manager. And I'm still talking about small bands, easy people that are you can just walk up to in a club. I'm not, no velvet ropes and VIP, who are you? Like little, again, you've never heard of them and won't. But then eventually I met somebody else and I showed him the pictures, and he was Mudvayne's publicist. Big metal band in the 90s and early 2000s. Amazing band. And they liked my pictures, and his publicist liked my pictures, so I toured with them, and I went to Europe, and I traveled the United States, and I generated this amazing body of work that started to get that people were talking about. And again, it was behind the scenes. I was on the bus, I was on the jet, I was in the bathrooms, I was behind the scenes everywhere. I was sound checks, after parties, fan signings, and those were the pictures. It wasn't just the pictures of Chad screaming into the microphone. Those pictures eventually made it to Linkin Park.
Wow.
Linkin Park hired me. I documented the 2004-2005 Meteora tour. That was a best-selling book on Amazon, 200-page hardcover, like pages, paper, your pictures on paper, and people flip through it and go, wow, what a concept. That's like so old school. That was the last major project that I shot on film, by the way, in 2005. Then I segued to digital. Then my Linkin Park stuff was seen by System of a Down. I've been System of a Down's personal photographer for 15 years now. I still work with them, but that's only like a few weeks out of the year, and the rest of the time they're doing their other things. And then Pitbull saw my System of a Down work, and he's like, yo, I want to bring my stuff to that level, come with me. Now that sounds like a really long process, and it actually took, from when I started that to where I am now, over 20 years.
That's
so it wasn't easy. It took a lot. It just took a lot of rejection, a lot of pain, a lot of I don't think anybody likes me. Why am I not making any money? Shooting pictures for free, dealing with that whole thing. Yes, you have to do it. Get over it, especially now more than ever. But the bottom line is you want your work to be seen by people, and so that's the best way to do it. Sorry, that was a
That's interesting. No, I mean, I like, to me, I think it's fascinating, and I think anybody who desires to get into that, that's invaluable.
Because the other way that everybody else tries is you sneak your camera in and then you try to get into the photo pit, which is just the first 3 songs, which you're not going to get the meat of the real show. You know, because the advice that I give other people is like, call a website, call a radio station, see if you can get a photo pass to a festival, go in, try to shoot some pictures, they'll put them on their website for free, and hope that somebody sees when it's like, oh, your picture's so cool, I want to hire you. That never happens, okay? There's never been a time when somebody took a picture that was so good that somebody saw it as like, that picture's amazing, I want to hire you. You have to have a body of work that really shows depth, and you have to show people things that they can't see somewhere else.
No, you know, what you're saying is actually really, really true, not just for the work that you do, but even being recognized by brands and being recognized by organizations in general. You know, I think people lose sight of the fact that the body of work is really important, and experience matters. And fortunately and unfortunately, that's something that you could directly control today. Today could be day one in this like process of gaining this experience, and so you know, I think that's super valuable. I think one of the other things you touched on, and I can't remember exactly where you said it, but you know, I kind of want to segue into the relationship aspect. You know, obviously you're traveling, you know, with Pitbull all over, all the time, and it's a very intimate relationship between 2 artists. You know, 2 different types of artists, and so how important is that social component to what you do with, not just with Pitbull, but other bands that you've worked with as well? Like, how important is it to be able to just be cool with these people? Is that important? Does it matter?
It's probably even more important, really. I mean, obviously the images you know, for an artist at that level, the images need to be at a certain level.
Right.
I mean, and my video content has literally been on every network from ABC to Univision.
Right.
You know, it's like, so.
And it has to be good at that point.
It has to be. I mean, it's just,
yeah,
that almost goes without saying. You know?
Right.
It's not even, it's like, is this going to look okay? You know, it's like,
No,
that question doesn't come up. But yeah, the personal aspect is more important because I'm living with these people, and not just when they're partying and having fun, but also when they're working.
Right.
You know, and when I mean working, I'm not just talking about jumping up and down on stage in front of 20,000 people. I'm also talking about alone in a hotel room at 3 a.m. where it's just the artist and a pen and a piece of paper and me and my camera.
Right.
And they're in the process of writing what's going to be the next #1 song around the world. And I'm there while that's happening.
That's crazy.
Okay? Obviously, my being there has to be unobtrusive to his creative process, because if it's just him and a piece of blank paper, but I'm there too.
Right.
Okay, if I'm annoying him, guess what happens?
Yeah.
You know, like
that's
that
done.
fast, like that fast. But there have been times when, through my patience and being very quiet and very, not even, like, people refer to what I do as a fly on the wall.
Right.
I don't like that, because a fly is still annoying.
Yeah,
you know,
of course.
It's buzzing around and you know where it is and you hear it and da 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 da. And I'm not one of those photographers that walks in the room and is like, okay, everybody, let's get a picture.
Sure.
And, the light's a little better here, and could you do that one more time? Because no, I'm not the fly on the wall.
Right.
I'm the spider in the corner. I'm that thing that's in that, you know, if you look up every night, oh yeah, you're still there, aren't you? I completely forgot. And it never moves.
Yep.
Doesn't make a sound, and then you look and it's gone, but you don't know where it is. It's not anywhere else. It's just going like, damn, where did it go? So yeah, that's my thing, is the spider in the corner, not the fly on the wall.
That's hilarious.
Because I have video footage of ink coming out of the pen onto a piece of paper, writing a line that was going to be a hit song.
That's crazy.
And that's, you know, how do you get that, and how do you get allowed to be able to do that? You know, so it's so yes, and I'm not saying that not every single artist that I've ever worked with, we've made that connection with. For instance, Coldplay, I worked with them for 3 days and they did and it was great, and they posted my pictures. Thank you, Greg Watermann, we loved you, and this is great. But then they never called me again.
Right.
So obviously the pictures were fine. They were posted. They printed in the tour book with credit, and everything was cool. But there was something there that didn't. Yeah, we want to try somebody else. Okay,
right.
So that's fine, and it's happened with plenty of artists. There are lots of artists that I've worked with only a few times, and but then there's a few that I've been working with for, you know, more than a decade, and it's like any other relationship that's a personal thing, you know.
Right.
Are you annoyed by having this person around? Do they talk too much? Do they not talk enough? Whatever it is, you know.
Right.
So you can't put your finger on it, and you have no control over it either. So you can't get uptight about if you work for somebody, did your best job, they liked the work, they approved what you did, they published it with a credit, they sent you a check, everything was fine, but you never get called back again. You're like, wonder what.
Yeah, what happened here?
You can't think about that though, because it'll kill you. You just have to move on to the next one and keep going.
That's interesting. That's really interesting. I talk a lot about it in my workshops and kind of in my lectures, and I stress so much that importance of having that kind of social aspect to what you do, because I think as creatives, the lion's share of creatives that I've ever talked to, that I've ever met, are pretty introverted by nature. Like I'm not the type personally, I don't know about you, but I'm not the guy that if there's an event or a party that I'm like in the middle of the crowd, you know, I'm not Pitbull at a party, you know what I mean?
I'm completely shy. I'm the voyeur. I mean, I'm talking a lot now because I'm supposed to be.
Right, because we're on camera. Exactly.
Yeah,
I'm the same way.
No, I was the very dorky, scared kid in high school, and in actuality, I sort of feel like the camera was the reason that I had an interaction with people, and I know that sometimes when people invite me to something, you know, and like they'll invite me to their wedding or and they're like, and you don't have to take pictures or anything, but if you want to bring a camera, feel free to. I'm like, really? How about that? And that's fine, you know. It's like, but you know what? I decided I don't have any problem with that. It's like, that's why you want me there, is because I take pictures. That's okay, because I don't do anything else. I'm not the life of the party. I'm not with the microphone or in the middle of the room with everybody. That's like your contribution. Right. I'm in the corner. I just want to be but I love photographing those people who are. Right. You know, because my get-off point is my flame that I'm the moth to is the energy that a rock star has.
Right.
And when I say rock star, I mean, Pitbull, Toby Keith, System of a Down, Hugh Hefner, whoever, all of the people that I'm shooting, they all have rock star qualities. There's something about them that I'm drawn to, that I'm impressed by, that I like capturing and then giving back to other people.
That's awesome. That's really awesome.
But yeah, I'm not that center of attention person at all, and don't prefer. And that's probably, for the most part, that probably helps me, because then that way I'm not competing with all of those other flames in the room. There's already enough heat, and you don't need more attention going on.
Exactly. No, I get it, and I think there's a lot of creatives that are in that boat, and they wonder if that's okay.
Right. Sure.
Like they wonder, is it okay if I'm that like quirky, nerdy person that doesn't talk, and it's not the life of the party? And
it depends what your process is, though, and what you're creating and how you do it. Like a director, on the other hand, when I work with them, they're very animated, and they have no problem keeping 300 people running, the whole time. It's 3 in the morning. Okay, let's go. I'm like, wow, I couldn't do that. That's work. That's not my thing, because I tried to be a director for a project, and that's not me. Give me a camera and tell me what you want all day long.
And then you got it.
Or just give me a camera and say, just do whatever you want to do. That's even better. But having to tell somebody else and be responsible, no.
Oh, geez. So for your work now, do you do mostly stills? Do you do mostly video? How important is it basically to be able to do both with what you do right now?
I still only tell people that I'm a still photographer because I have no training in video, so I can't call myself a cinematographer, a DP, or any of those things. They don't apply to me. But like I say to everybody now, on all cameras have a black button and a red button, and if you want to be employable in the 21st century as a content creator and image maker, I really think you have to be at least versatile enough and capture both ways. I don't edit. I work with really good editors. I'm fortunate enough that I have a budget so that I don't have to do that, which is nice because I don't have the time to do it either.
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
But you really need to do 50% of what I shoot now is video, and it's stretching even more because now video quality is so high that we are literally able to pull not just usable but reproduction quality stills from our video footage. So it's become now is if I'm shooting something in video and something happens that I'm like, wow, it'd be really nice to have a photo of that. I don't have to either interrupt my video footage to get a picture and go back, or just I can pull that. I can take care of that later. There's a variety of options that I can do even.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy, and you're kind of playing it down a little bit with the video. Like you haven't, you didn't have formal training or anything in video, but you've had some like pretty awesome videos.
Thank you.
I mean, you had that Pitbull. What was the name of the music or the song? So maybe they can. I can link it in the description for the video, the music video that you did.
Well, several. The biggest one that I've worked on of Pitbull's videos was Timber. That just went to 1 billion YouTube views. I was like camera 3 on that one, really.
Yeah.
Feel This Moment, his duet with Christina Aguilera, also a hit. I was the primary camera on that. That's almost 500 million views now.
Jeez.
So that's super cool.
Did it go to school for any of that?
No, but you know what? Here's the thing: if you're working with a really good editor, that's a lot of making a music video is not the same thing as shooting The Godfather.
Right,
you know
right.
what I
That's
mean?
true.
It's not. It's nothing. Yeah. A music video is just really an advertisement, a long commercial for a song.
Right.
That's really all that it is. And whenever should I wait till I'm stop?
No, we're good. Yeah.
My thing when I'm making a music video is I just try to make the song be the star of the whole thing, and I let my visuals take a secondary seat to the music itself. And I think in that regard, that's how I get away with it, because otherwise, again, I'm not a cinematographer, but I do know how to frame a scene, I do know how to light something properly, and I understand moment. And as a photographer, a 30th of a second gives me a moment, all right? But as a videographer, or whatever I am and doing, if I just hold my camera a little steady a little bit longer, not a 30th of a second, but for 30 seconds, that gives my editor more than long enough of a clip to pull however many seconds he wants out of that, to put with the next piece and the next piece and the next. I mean, I've seen some of the comments, on some of my videos, and I realize that they jump around a lot and they're a little I've even described them myself as they're almost like a jigsaw puzzle of a ransom note.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because they're individual scenes and things
like
put together, but because we edit and we stay on the click and on the beat, and the edit of the song, the edit of my images reacts to whatever's going on in the music. You just start listening to the song and you watch my images and it all works somehow.
So speaking of the video thing, because even though you may not have, obviously you're very good at what you do in both the stills and the video, but when it comes to shooting video, I was actually really surprised because you said that you shot the music video that you showed me with the A9, and I figured, you know, a lot of people who are doing video, like even myself, I would think, well, you're probably shooting S-Log2 or S-Log3, you know, so that you can get the most dynamic range. But yet I'm seeing in that video you shot, you have dark scenes, you've got bright scenes, and you're doing it with a camera that doesn't shoot in log at all.
Right.
You know, so how do you feel that the A9 works for shooting video even though it doesn't have those features?
The sensor itself, though, not enough people are talking about that. I don't think people, they think that it's just the same sensor that's in every other camera, and that's not true. I mean, I don't know what the inside line on it is. I don't have the technical information.
Yeah.
But I had
from experience.
I had an A7R, I had an A7S, I had an A7R2, I had an A7S2, and now I have the A9. And I can tell you unequivocally that sensor in the A9 is fire. Okay, and there's something going on there. It's really, really good. I use the neutral setting, just standard one of the settings and the thing. I just keep it really, really flat. I don't send it to a colorization.
Right.
I don't do that in post-processing. We sharpen it a little bit, give it a little more. We basically bring it back up from neutral because neutral is a little too flat. So it needs a little bit more saturation, a little bit more contrast, and a little bit more sharpness. But by adding that into the scenes that need it later, because some scenes don't, totally in that neutral thing when it's, because live is very contrasty.
Right.
It's very contrasty. Your blacks are, forget about it. Like even your blacks with detail are blacks with no detail. And then those your highlights, you don't have any white highlights because they're either blue or green or purple or whatever.
Right.
So that's a very complicated thing. But yeah, if you try to get that sensor as flat as possible, I can only imagine what the next sensor is coming that takes that A9 technology and says, okay, but what if we use this kind of thing and spread it more and made it video specific instead of sports specific?
That's going to be nuts. It's going to be nuts.
And that will be my next camera because the 24 megapixels of the A9 is a still camera, way too many megapixels for me.
Right.
Way too many. I'm much happier shooting only 12 megapixels. Yes, I'm actually saying this on camera.
Wow.
I had a billboard in Times Square from 12 megapixels. So
a billboard.
All you pixel peepers, I don't know what you're getting upset about.
No, you know, that's the funniest part to me where you hear people say like, oh, you know, I got to get 42 megapixels because, you know, I need to be able to print big prints. I'm like, I've seen 8 megapixel files that are printed massive, you know, huge prints.
There's a place for it. If you're shooting cars or jewelry or food, some interiors, if you want some nature shot where you can feel the lint on the fuzz of the lint of the fuzz on the flower that's that far away. I mean, I get that fascination with it because I used to be that way with film.
Right.
You know, when I would nail something that was so sharp, it was like scary when you look through the grain focuser. You don't know what that is. You look through the grain focuser in a dark room, like, wow, that's amazing. So I get the look how sharp it is thing, but now I'm in a retro thing because I shoot people for a living, and I shoot people for a living who are jumping up and down on stage and sweating. They're not wearing makeup. They're hanging out at 3 o'clock in the morning and they're whatever else. I don't need 20 or 30 or 40 megapixels of their faces. That's unnecessary detail that just winds up being more post-production work for me.
Right.
And it's not necessary. And it's not just that my pictures are mostly for social media, because we print stuff. We sell tour books that are full size on beautiful thick paper with expensive ink and blah, blah, blah. So I still need that, oh yeah, that's an amazing picture photo quality. And
because you never know where it's going to go.
Right, I don't. And because my pictures are also picked up third party by our advertisers.
Right.
You know, I've Budweiser billboards and Coca-Cola billboards, and it's just a live Pitbull picture that's dropped in with all their copy and stuff around it.
Right.
He didn't pose for that shoot. He hates posing for those things, but my on-stage pictures are good enough that he doesn't have to.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Well, you know, we talked about a lot of stuff in this video. I think you dropped a lot of nuggets, you know, just great information. Where can people go to see your work?
I'm easy to find online, gregwaterman.com, YouTube Greg Waterman, Instagram Greg Waterman, anywhere else Greg Waterman. I've forgotten the things that I'm on.
He's out and about.
Sometimes I'm there and once and I don't come back.
Oh, man.
Yeah, but that's, and pretty much the majority of the stuff that Pitbull releases came out of my camera for the last 8 years. System of a Down, same thing. We've got, I'm not sure when this is airing, but some
it'll be out like, it might even be out today.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
I'm going to try to get this out to everyone quick.
Okay, cool. Well, something. If I've got any System of a Down fans out there listening, Scars on Broadway is releasing a new album. That's Darren's side project. We're releasing a new album this summer, all new music. Yes, it was really going to be the next System of a Down album, but Darren wanted to release it anyway.
Oh, wow.
So you get to hear it. It's heavy as F, so you're going to enjoy that. A special treat, I was in the recording studio when he made that. He did everything himself. He wrote, produced, sang, played the guitars, obviously, did the bass, and tracked the drums.
Oh,
I have
my
video
gosh.
footage of him doing all of that. And we are, as we speak right now, I've got an editor cutting behind-the-scenes pieces that we will be dropping all over social media of things of like full frame of him screaming into a microphone.
That is
stuff
insanity.
that nobody has ever seen of him doing.
He's like a one-man band.
And yeah, and that's
Holy
what's
cow.
coming out. That's any day now, you'll see that.
I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to that. Definitely make sure that you follow his
Thank
work.
you very much.
And thank you so much for joining
No,
for
it's a
this
pleasure,
interview.
always.
And make sure you subscribe to the channel as well. If you guys have any questions, leave them in the comment section for this video. Maybe, possibly, you know, if he's not doing anything, he might chime in and answer. And if not, I'll jump in there and I'll answer on your behalf. I'll be like, I'll put on a fedora.
I answer questions, and seriously, you can email me, DM me on Instagram. I respond to everything.
Yep, he's really good about that.
I always have, and I get questions from around the world every single day from people. Send me pictures, ask me advice. It doesn't matter. Anything at all. Oh, and by the way, the beautiful black and white portrait that you will find of me everywhere online, that is my official press photo, was created by this incredible portraitist right here.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, I you know, it was funny. I saw that the other day. I was like, hey, I took that photo. That was pretty cool, man. Yeah. It's a small world. But hopefully you guys enjoyed the interview, and definitely subscribe to the channel while you're here. I've got a lot more content coming out in the future, and you know, again, thanks for joining us, and I'll see you guys later.
Thank you, peace.